So today I want to talk to you about creative leadership. And I would like to ask and hopefully start answering three questions. Why, what, and how of creative leadership. And specifically, I will argue that emotions and emotional intelligence are key to creative leadership. So to start with the first question, why put creativity and leadership together in the first place? So the World Economic Forum, you might be aware of this, has recently come up with a list of skills for 2025. 5 out of 10 skills pertain to problem solving and creativity. Another 3 are about self-management and working with people. That brings us to 80% of the skills. And all of these have very much to do with emotions and how we deal with them. So you might be familiar with this list of skills and about the future of work, and you are surely already living through it and aware how important that is in your daily work. There is another reason, though, also. Creativity is rooted in emotions. Emotions can either fuel creativity or they can kill creativity, which you are probably aware of too. Psychologist Robert Sternberg described creativity as a decision. And also, artist Henri Matisse said that creativity takes courage. I think that these two statements are very closely related. Creativity is a decision that takes courage. When we face an open-ended problem, when we are working on a project, we can try to do something that has been done before. We can choose the safe route, or we can decide to do something original, and that is by definition uncertain. So that uncertainty requires willingness, and willingness to take a risk, and willingness to take a hit to our reputation and what we can do in front of ourselves and in front of others. So the question becomes, will we dare? And in my lab, we have started to study this process. What is this decision-making like when we could be potentially creative? And we found that there are lots of emotional parts to this decision. When people hear the word decision, they think of kind of decision trees and something that seems very cognitive, very thinking-oriented in nature, but we are humans and we don't have just one part of us, and we cannot isolate different parts of us. And people have emotional concerns when they're making decisions. So one kind of concerns, these more negative attitudes and worries that we have are about what's going to happen next. So people have a concern whether original ideas are going to be considered silly by other people around us. And then have this attitude of, well, maybe better to be safe than original, maybe to go with that thing that is expected, that is not going to have potential negative consequences to us. But then many of us just cannot help ourselves or don't want to help ourselves. We think creative work is important, it is part of who we are, and we think that it is intrinsically important to everything we do. In creative work, there's a lot of others who are taken into account in these decisions, especially in the context of work. Those others, those most important others, are people in leadership positions. So the question is, what can those leaders do to enable that courageous decision for people to be creative? And what they do is really connect different categories of skills on that list. So in that categories of skills, what you have seen is there are some that are coming up with ideas, there are some that are managing people, managing ourselves and their work. So what creative leaders do is they put together creativity, dealing with emotions in themselves and helping others deal with emotions in this process, and working with people all together. So the question is, what does that really look like? And all our jobs include demands, and those demands on their own are coming at us from all angles. They are what is pressing on us. And just on their own, they can lead to burnout and negative work outcomes for ourselves in terms of our well-being, and also in terms of what we can able to accomplish and do at work. On the other hand, our job resources. Those resources can be skills, can be material things, but also they are relational resources. And creative leaders and things that they do are a major resource of work that can create the environment that will support creativity at work. One specific of these skills that leaders can have and make a big difference in how we experience work and what we are able to do are the skills of emotional intelligence. And sometimes this idea of emotional intelligence is thrown out, and there's a lot of talk about it, and you feel very familiar and kind of, I know what that means, but it's very hard to define it once you try to define it. So here it is. It is not about being a nice or happy person. There are very specific skills that are learnable and teachable and learnable. So there are 4 of them: perceiving emotions accurately, not just thinking that you can tell what people are feeling, but what you think that people are feeling is actually corresponding to what they do. Because we all know people who really think that they are good at reading emotions, but oh my God, they're abysmal, right? It's whenever I say imagine a person, we can all do it, and there are all these little smirks on people's faces. Yes, we all know them. Another ability of emotional intelligence is using emotions to help thinking and problem solving. That one seems most difficult for people to comprehend because of this cultural belief we have that that really creativity is interfering with thinking, and that emotions are interfering with thinking. But emotions are really giving us some clues in what is going on in our environment, and having more data is going to help us save those problems and solve them. Understanding emotions means, well, knowing what are likely causes and consequences of emotions, and managing them means essentially keeping it together. Emotions are sometimes going to rattle us. The question is, how do we respond to those situations when we are rattled? And how do we respond to get the best outcomes that we are interested in? And to apply this to what leaders can do at work specifically is they can show some specific things that they can do. So those leaders who are able to perceive emotions, they're going to realize when people are dissatisfied at work. Those who are able to use emotions to solve problems and help thinking are going to find ways to channel dissatisfaction into creating productive change, not just kind of sit with it, but use it as inspiration. they will also realize how their decisions are affecting behavior and feelings of others around them. And when they realize, they're going to acknowledge that and start that process of having people feel heard and seen. And finally, they will be able to help themselves to manage what they are experiencing and work, and support others when they are feeling disappointed or upset, for instance. So here's a question. What do workers, people at work, experience as they're doing their work? So we did a study, a national study of more than 14,000 workers in the United States across all industries. And we wanted to see how their leaders, their most immediate leaders, their supervisors who are very much influencing their experience of work, what are the consequences of their supervisors acting in emotional intelligent ways or not? And this is the first thing we found. So here are two contrasting word clouds. And these word clouds, you might be familiar with these. The bigger the word, it was more frequently mentioned. It is more pronounced in people's minds. And this, in people's own words, where we asked them, how do you feel at work? Those who told us that their supervisors do not act in emotional intelligent ways, they told us they're frustrated, stressed, tired, angry. Sure, they're happy sometimes, because we are all happy sometimes at work. But there's a feeling to this that is one of pressure and tension. On the other hand, those whose supervisors are acting in emotional intelligent ways have a different feel. These workers have a different feel of work. They are feeling happy, and happy is this, especially in American culture, this catch-all word. When you want to say positive, you use the word happy. It is a very important phrase to describe something of a positive nature. Certainly there's frustration, certainly there's stresses of work, but people are more able to respond to them if their leaders are acting in these emotionally supportive ways. A different way of looking at that is to say, okay, we are all experiencing some very common emotions at work. So everybody's feeling sad and tired and happy and frustrated oftentimes at work, because we are humans and we experience very much of a variety of emotions. But what is different in those whose supervisors are not showing emotional intelligent behavior and those who are is quite striking. So those without emotional intelligence supervisors are telling us that their work is marked by a lot of feelings in the anger group, what emotion scientists call the anger category. And they are feeling annoyed and irritated and aggravated all the way towards mad. And very importantly, they're feeling unappreciated, underappreciated, or plain out don't care. While on the other hand, we have this motivation cluster of those whose supervisors are showing emotional intelligence behavior to work. They are loving their work, they're motivated, enjoy it. They feel challenged, so it's not that these supervisors are easy, they're feeling challenged, but also they're feeling fulfilled. And importantly, these are not just how people feel, as if that wasn't important in its own right, but this also has consequences of what people are able to do. And what people are able to do is that once you have supervisors who are emotionally supportive, showing these emotional intelligence behaviors, people are telling us they are able to grow in their work. They are able to acquire new skills. They are able to do new things, try new challenges, and they have more positive experience of the work environment. And in turn, all of this is leading to them having more creative ideas and more engagement and innovation at work. So this is sometimes, especially when I give presentations to senior leadership teams and CEOs, they say, sure, it's very nice for people to feel well, but what happens? What do people do? And what people do is that they are able to be innovative at work. So that is, well, why we need to care about this and what happens. The question is now, okay, how do we make it happen? And how do we make it happen is, well, we know that these are important skills. We need to build these skills. We have very good research that these skills can be taught and they can be learned, and they can be learned in children, they can be learned in work training programs. It is possible to teach them and learn them. So the first thing is to attend to, notice, seek to understand and acknowledge how people feel. This is challenging because even if you can tell what people are feeling, even if you have the skill, there is a need for having supports at work that allow you to even acknowledge that you know what people are experiencing. We are living in cultures that have a long history of an idea of what professionalism is that ignores emotions. It is this attitude of leave the emotions at the doorstep and then come as, I don't know, part human. I'm not quite sure what would that be if you left emotions at the doorstep, but the truth is you cannot leave emotions at the doorstep. And it is important to acknowledge both yours and others. Next, it is what we do is use emotions to inspire ideas, prevent premature settling on ideas. Sometimes being in very happy moods in particular can be not a good thing, because when we are happy, that is a sign, an evolutionary sign that everything is good. We feel happy when things are good in our environment, we are doing well, and feeling happy can be sometimes counterproductive. And we have to pull ourselves back and say, hey, we are going to now say that this is all good while we are not quite finished with it. Figuring out what emotions are telling us can make us pull back or approach and learn from what they are saying. Take frustration. Frustration tells us something is not quite working right, and chances are that the approach you are taking is not being productive. That is the information we can get from the feeling of frustration. And we can say to ourselves, this is not a situation to work harder, this is the situation to seek a different path. So we can learn from what emotions are telling us. Emotions are data. And sometimes when I speak to audiences who have a little bit of resistance to idea of emotions, once I say emotions are data, then they become more interested because we are now, especially in today's world, used to dealing with data. We know that having more information is going to be helpful in problem solving. And this is another kind of information that we can have. And finally, what we can do is manage emotions, manage our own emotions and those of others around us. And how we do that is by developing and using strategies that can be helpful. And this is not to have one kind of strategy. It's not one size fits all. Different situations are going to call for different strategies. Sometimes that strategy is take a break. Sometimes that strategy is talk to someone else. Sometimes the strategy is looking at things from different perspectives. And I am aware of time, and I want to make sure that we have plenty of opportunity for questions. So I'm going to end here and open it up to Nareesh and questions from all of you.
Great, thank you so much for that, Zorana. So we do have some questions in the Slido as well. If you haven't had a chance to drop your questions, please feel free to drop your questions in the Slido link that I just shared, or please feel free to just yell it out just right here as well. And also, if I'd highly recommend if you could turn your cameras on so we can all see each other, and that would make us feel like we're all in the same room as well. Cool, awesome. So Zorana, thank you so much for that. I think I'll probably kind of go through some of the questions that are in the Slido link. And I think first question that I find interesting that I'm going to pick from the list is the question. I'm not sure who asked it, but if you did ask that question, please feel free to raise your hand. But the question is, how does an emotionally intelligent individual function? I think the question is, sorry, who asked that question, by the way? Did anyone ask the question? Just so that we can clarify what you meant by that. So I'm assuming that this is around understanding what does good look like in terms of emotional intelligence?
Yeah, I very much like this question because I think that it gets to this core of what people sometimes think emotional intelligence is. Sometimes there is this idea that emotional intelligent people are just happy. They are happy all the time. They have relationships that are free of conflict. They are going kind of smoothly through life. And I have news for you that is not true. Emotionally intelligent people function in the world the way it exists. So they have a broad range of feelings, just like all of us here do. They are feeling the stress and the tension and exhaustion at times. They are feeling angry at people, and they can get in conflicting situations. The thing that is different is once these things happen, what do you do with them? So it is not that emotionally intelligent people have a smooth sailing. They are better able to respond to the storms when they happen, to stay with the maritime analogy. And that doesn't mean they're not going to get hurt. They might get hurt, but they might do better in dealing with it. So conflicts, for instance, happen at work and in our everyday life, just because we are human and we are all different and we have different ideas, we have different opinions, we have different priorities. And so there are clashes. So now the question is, okay, when that clash happens, because we are part of humanity, how are you going to respond to it? So what is different that emotional intelligent people do is they go through those four things. They start with how they are feeling, and they are they're trying to identify their feelings precisely. So not just say, I am mad, or I am stressed, or I am upset, but be more specific. Emotion scientists call this specificity emotion granularity. So the more specifically you can hone down to what kind of upset this is, what kind of stress this is, you are going to be able to manage it better too. So to stay with this example, you are feeling upset, and well, what kind of upset might it be? It could be that you are disappointed. You have disappointment means you had an expectation of something good happen, something positive, something exciting, and then that did not happen. You were let down. That is disappointment. But if you were upset in the way of that is of different nature, you were upset because there is an injustice that you have seen somewhere, that is, well, closer to being angry or closer to being frustrated with something. Now, once you know more specifically what something is, you can manage it better. It turns out, and this is one of the most surprising pieces of research that I have seen, just the act of specifically identifying your emotion without doing anything else, without using those strategies, fancy strategies of managing emotions, just identifying it more specifically than saying stressed or upset, makes you feel better, because you are better understanding what is specifically going on. Once you say I'm disappointed, you have identified the causes. You have clues into what you can do. You can try to solve that problem and not just kind of brood through the day. So that's the different thing that happens with emotional intelligent people.
Yeah, I think that and that ties in with Sam, what you asked around what behaviors can help in developing emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. Did you want to maybe elaborate another question?
No, but I can see how that answer completely plays into that. But I'd be interested to know if there's other simple behavioral techniques or just behaviors that would be helpful. Mm-hmm. But I think that kind of analysis of what you're feeling, I can see how that could be very helpful.
Yeah, so that is the first step, that you need to tune in and go beyond those things we are used to saying in everyday life. The big things is, if you are feeling positive, you say happy. If you are feeling negative, you are saying you are stressed or upset. Kind of go beyond. That is important, and that is something that can be learned with practice. So the first step of learning that with practice is even trying it, even saying, oh, this is important. I did not know it was important. So let me now try to figure it out and try to use more specific words in understanding my experience. There are apps that help with this and that can guide you a little bit. So at times it is a little bit hard to just say, okay, find a specific word. It is, especially if you are in the moment feeling something powerful. So it's hard to pull yourself enough to attach that word to the situation. So there is a little analytical technique that can help you get partway there. And there are two big defining features of emotions, of most emotions. One is how pleasant they are. And we very much know how pleasant they are. Sometimes we use the words positive and negative. I don't like using them because they imply that these are good or bad emotions. They are to be avoided on the approach. but that's a situational. So do they feel pleasant or unpleasant? So anxiety is unpleasant and amusement is pleasant. We all know what that is, just kind of intuitively. The other feature of emotions is activation. How, and that is more of a bodily sensation. Think of it as the fluttering in your body, that activity in your body that you feel, even if you are sitting down, you feel it, kind of your cells activating and boiling. So being sad has little of this activation. You are very kind of shutting down, but being anxious or being angry, also being happy, are more activated feelings. So when you are trying to start analyzing it by these features, it can get you closer to identifying what exactly you are feeling. So that is one big thing that you can do, is just take a moment before reacting, and take a moment in a situation, in a feeling situation, to figure out what's going on. So that is one big thing that you can do in terms of practice and in terms of learning. I have seen somebody mention that regulation is the most difficult one to learn, and you're totally right. Managing emotions successfully, regulating them, is most difficult. And it's most difficult because it uses all those other three skills. In order to regulate your emotions, you have to first know what you're feeling. You have to understand how emotions happen and what are their consequences. And then you need to have some strategies to deal with them. So one thing that you can do as you are learning to better regulate emotions is insert a moment between something happening, there is a trigger, and your reaction. That does not have to be a minute. That does not have to be 5 minutes. It can be just a moment, just enough that you can stop that automatic reaction. Many of our automatic reactions, not all of them, but many of them, are not quite helpful. Because imagine a situation, you are coming home and your child has yet again left their shoes in the middle of the hallway, and you trip over them, and you have told them not to do that 783 times already, at minimum, right? The first thing that comes, the first thing you want to do is yell. And these are oftentimes the automatic reactions we have. So if we just insert a second between what happens and what we react, we can start considering what's going on and start. I want to use the word thinking, but it's not like thinking when you sit and do pros and cons and you have a detailed plan, but it is pulling you away from the immediate situation. And then as learning any kind of skill, you need reflection and feedback. So you have to figure out, okay, I have done this. Did it work? Did it make me feel better? Did it make me more productive in doing whatever I was supposed to do that day? Did that really achieve its goal? Because regulating emotions is always towards some goal. And that goal is not always to feel better. Sometimes the goal is to do something more effectively. And so we have to ask ourselves whether it was effective for the particular goal. And then you figure out, well, it was effective or it was not effective. Am I going to do this again? Am I going to try not to do this again in the future? And it's a process. Think of learning a skill. Think of learning what skill might we have all in common. Maybe riding a car, driving a car, And I have learned how to drive a car as an adult, not as a teenager. And I remember what the process was like. It did not happen overnight. It took time. It took paying attention to things and catching yourself when you might be making a mistake. And the same thing is with emotions. We are going to fail. We are not always going to be successful. Emotional intelligent people are not successful at all times. It is kind of a balance of being relatively more successful.
Great, thanks, Zorana. I've got a few questions here that are kind of, I guess, related, I think, together. So I'm going to like try to package this up into one question. So I think there's a couple of questions from Manoj and also another question kind of similar to that. And the question is more around external factors. So external factors that might impact the awareness of emotional intelligence. So things like the leadership you're working under or the culture of the organization can impact how emotionally intelligent you can act in those environments. And I think the question was around what are some of the things we can do as an individual to try to affect some change in that external environment. So not inside of us, but outside of us.
Yeah, that is a great question because sometimes there is, we want to help people, and sometimes people get an impression only if you do these things you'll be fine. But we are not just individuals living in a vacuum. We live in social environments, and we are influenced by those around us. At work culture and the climate that is created, especially by leaders, they have this top-down influence of how everybody feels and whether everybody's on their toes and tense at all times or not, and whether people feel safe in their work environments to share their ideas, to not always be at their top performance, to make mistakes occasionally. So the influence of leaders is outsized. They really set the tone. That is something that has to be acknowledged, and that is something that organizations and should care about, because there is in emotion science this phenomenon that is called emotion contagion. Emotions we are still in the middle of a pandemic, emotions are contagious. And you can see this when somebody who comes into work depressed can bring people down, or you can see somebody who has some celebratory event and who brights up the group. And both positive emotions are contagious, and unpleasant ones are contagious. It spreads. So that is the social nature of emotions. Now, it is true that leaders have an outsized influence, but there are things that we can also do in our work groups and with people who are coworkers, and we collaborate with and work with on a daily basis. So there was this wonderful research done about the influence of coworkers on creativity and innovation at work. And what they found is even those people who are really not satisfied with their jobs, they are not happy, they would rather not be there, but they have to be there for various reasons, even they are able to contribute and create successfully at work if they have support from their coworkers, if they get feedback from them that is supportive and actionable. So specific to what you are doing, and helpful in making changes at work. And if you have support, emotional support, and particularly respect from the coworkers. So it is, and that gives us an opportunity to be those people who are going to contribute to change. It is, and again, we are kind of acting on the contagious nature of emotions by trying to act in these emotional, intelligent ways and be supportive and helpful in our with our colleagues. That those behaviors can then spread in the group and make at least our group and the climate of our group more conducive to creativity and to innovation at work.
Great, thanks, Zorana. Felipe, you had a question.
Zorana, you talked about managing your emotions, and I want to understand the whole of the managing emotions through motivation, because I believe that, like you said, that not good or bad emotions, but of course you can use, for example, anger to be a good motivator to doing your work or keeping doing your work. So can you explain this a little better, or if that's not relation at all? I don't know.
Yeah, no, there definitely is using emotions to help thinking and decision making and problem solving and managing emotions work together to create more effective motivation at work. So to give you an example, and you have given something, a beginning of an example yourself. Anger is, we oftentimes think of anger as something that is bad and to be avoided. But what does really anger do? What does anger tell us? Well, if we take that approach of emotions are data, emotions are information, what anger tells us is we believe that we have seen an injustice happen. Something is not right. Something is not fair around us. And that can certainly be a great motivator. Saying something is not right, something needs to change, can be motivation to start that change. Of course, you are just an individual and you cannot change everything in the world, but perhaps there's something that you can change. And we see in the United States with the pandemic, there was last year this giant wave of resignations. And people had time during the pandemic where they didn't have to commute, when they had more free time to actually pull back for a second and say, hey, what is going on? And they realized they got that data. They got the data loud and clear that something is not right. And they have done something about it. What they have done about it is, well, many people have quit the jobs in which they were, look for different jobs. That is not the only way we can react. Another way we can react is by trying to make a change within a situation where we are and trying to solve some problems. So that's one example. Another example of really motivating emotions, motivating work is on a different side. Creative people in particular are very passionate about what they do. And they have strong desire to do what they are doing. They have commitment. They have their identities built around their work in important ways. And that can show. These personal feelings, when expressed, can have very motivating and positive consequences. Motivating consequences for, showing this intensity and showing this commitment, and then pulling other people who work with you in motivating them to join and to do their best work, but also motivating others who can be supporters. So there's this amazing work with research with entrepreneurs, those who more successfully show their passion, they are more likely to get funding from investors because they are reacting to that emotional expression, and they see that as these people are motivated, they are the ones who are going to do this no matter what.
I think another question that might be related is around, I think from Sam around, and what he says is around cultivating playfulness can be very helpful to encourage creativity. Is it also helpful / useful for emotional intelligence too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it could be. So playfulness includes in itself, or it's very closely related to curiosity. And we think of, when we say the word playful, we oftentimes first think of children, and they are just asking questions, right? They can get annoying with how many questions they ask. But there's that attitude of openness and asking and looking in what could be. And with developing emotional intelligence, you can have the attitude of curiosity about your emotions, the attitude of, okay, I can learn more about emotions. Maybe right now, I do not know exactly what are the differences between feeling envious and feeling jealous, but I can learn that. I wonder what that is. People seem to be using them interchangeably, but are they actually? They're not. They are quite different in nature. So you can have that attitude in any kind of learning.
Thanks, Zorana. So I'm going to take like a last question, and this is a question I'm actually really, curious about, and this is one from Jason. And Jason asks, how do medications / drugs, pharmaceutical and recreational, and structuring creative processes affect the quality of creative thinking?
Oh, these are big questions, and there are multiple ones in there. So I am not a neuroscientist or a psychiatrist to get into the question of drugs in great detail. So I am not fully going to probably answer the question, or probably not fully answer it to your full satisfaction. So this is a full disclosure. Drugs have a place in treating problems, just like you are going to get treated for cancer. They are some psychological illnesses that need treatment for people to be successful in their everyday lives. They're not going to solve all of your problems. You are still going to have to deal with interpersonal conflict and work being challenging and having too many things to do and having to figure out how to do them. But what they can do is take away the edge of being overwhelmed. I see Jason saying that he's concerned specifically with antidepressants. Yeah, so they can have that, taking that edge to have enough of the calming effect that you are not overwhelmed and inundated with emotion. Now it's taking that edge that is not manageable on your own, and now you need to build skills to manage those everyday emotions and the range of them that people are going to experience. They are not going to be a solution for everything. They will need to be complemented with building of skills. So oftentimes people think when they talk about emotions is they happen to us. we are the object and they are imposed on us. And sometimes that is true. So some situations are so overwhelming and so big that we really are pushed by emotions. But most of those everyday emotions are not going to be like that, and we can do something about them. That's where the skills come in. So in medical situations or in trauma situations, yes, we are pushed by emotions. But in everything else, which is the majority of life, we have to learn how to deal with it the best we can, and that's not going to be successful at all times, and that is okay, because we are human. We are not going to be successful at anything at all times.
Great, and I think that's a great way to end the session by just, I guess, reiterating the fact that we have agency over a lot of our emotions and the decisions that come out of it, including the decision to be creative. As long as we harness them, structure them, and to get to the outputs, the creative outputs that we're looking for. So yeah, Zorana, thank you so much for joining us again. And please listen to Zorana's interview and the Design Thinking podcast if you haven't already. Some really brilliant, nuggets of insights there as well. And next week we have the author of the UX Careers Handbook, Corey Lepson's interview going live. So please to watch out for that as well. And Zorana, lastly, if people want to find you online, how can they do that?
I am going to paste in the chat. I have an active blog where I write many of the findings from our research, and I am also on Twitter and would love to see you there.
Great, and I'll also post the link to Zorana's episode that went live last week, so you can just listen to it in your spare time as well. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that session, and we'll see you again soon.